and Merry Christmas. Although some of you might be watching this before Christmas and some of you might be watching it after Christmas. Whatever, I hope you will have, are having, or have had a very happy day. Now, I'm going to be talking about three things here. And the first is to do with people who are alone at Christmas. It's a time when families are supposed to get together and be all merry and jolly and all the rest of it. And everything's supposed to be marvellous. And if you're not in that situation, you are often given the feeling that you're entirely on your own as the one person who's on your own at Christmas, which of course is not true. And there are many people who are in family settings who are on their own because they don't really get along with the family anyway. So what I'm going to do in the description, I'm going to give you some links to help that some people might need over Christmas, especially somebody who's been recently bereaved. That is very tough. And Christmas is all about family, and yes, that's awful when you're given the feeling that you're out of it, on top of the grief you're already experiencing. So just look at the links if you want to. There's one for New Zealand. There are a couple for Australia. I think I've got a couple for Britain, 2 or 3 for Britain, and then one for America. There are a couple of links to the Samaritans. Of course, I know that they're honourable. I don't know about the others. Some, they appear not to charge, but you just be careful of that. You don't want people ripping you off at Christmas as well. But if what I'm providing doesn't fit the bill, then look for something else, because there's bound to be something. And for instance, I don't know how it works, but if you're on some sort of online chat, then it doesn't matter where the people are. But just try and make sure. Don't give any personal details to anybody for any reason, and certainly not card numbers. Just remember that. All right, so that's the first section. Now I'm just going to do a quick history of Christmas. And the fact is, it's a Northern European holiday because the further north you get, the more it becomes obvious that the sun is dropping low and then not rising as much. And then if you're a primitive agricultural society, it's quite worrying if the sun isn't coming back, and you're not sure it will be. So when on around December the 21st, 22nd, you see the sun has reached its lowest, and then by the 23rd, the day is just a couple of minutes longer, and you know the sun is returning, that's a great relief. And so by the 25th, when everybody is absolutely certain, that's when they have a celebration, and perhaps something of the idea that you want to welcome the sun back as well. And the Vikings did it, and the Romans did it, and the Romans have not that much of a deep winter, not like the Norwegians and the Swedes and the Finns do. So, but still, it's important. And so the Romans celebrated 2 holidays in December. One of them was Saturnalia, which everyone knows about, and it was a 2-week festival of lack of control. And it's Saturnalia because it honoured the god of agriculture, which was Saturn. And then on December the 25th specifically, that was supposed to be the birth date of the god Mithra, which is a sun god. And obviously you can see how that's important. There's hardly any sun. Well, by North European standards, of course, the Roman nadir of the year was hardly worth the mention, but obviously the Romans thought so. So the sun was not much there, and then started to rise and wax, and that was Mithra, the sun god. So on December the 25th, they celebrated that, and both Saturnalia and the party celebrating the birth of Mithra, they were just drunken orgies of various sorts, and pretty noisy and unconstrained. As Christian spread across Europe, the Christian clergy wanted to, well, discourage people from following these old pagan ideas. But there was one thing they could not get rid of. There were many that they did get rid of, but Easter was one, and Christmas was especially difficult. So what they decided to do was say, all right, that's the birthday of Jesus, you can celebrate it, just go to church in the morning, or something along those lines. And they adapted the pagan rituals, and people sort of forgot that the Yule log, which was the Norwegian version of the winter festivities, Yule being the god, and you got a Yule log which was supposed to be big enough to burn for 12 days or something like that. That Yule just meant the season and not the gods. So when you burnt the Yule log, you were just honouring the season. And the mistletoe, which was one of the very few green things that you'd find in forests at the winter, with berries, which had become a symbol of pagan fertility. That was just seasonal, and they watered down the idea from a sort of bonk fest that the mistletoe might have represented to a chaste kiss under the mistletoe. I've just remembered a little thing in Dickens about the Christmas party with the mistletoe and the men nudging the girls underneath, the ladies underneath the mistletoe for a kiss. And Dickens says, well, the ladies were very modest and they fluttered and they said, oh, no, no, no. And they gently pushed the men away, but they did everything but actually remove themselves from the area of the mistletoe. Okay, so that was the history, and as I said, every December the Vikings they'd have more to celebrate than most about the midwinter solstice. And some of them wouldn't even see that actually in parts of northern Scandinavia where the sun doesn't even get up in the morning till March. And even then it's a little crescent popping up over the horizon and then hiding away. So they would feast, they'd sing, they'd play games, they'd have banquets, they'd sacrifice to their gods. And when you're in the depths of winter, there's not that much else you can do. You can't go out and plant anything. You shouldn't go too far anyway. You'd probably just freeze to death. So why not stay home, keep warm, and enjoy yourself? And the other thing about the Scandinavians and the Yule celebrations was they would invite or nominate an old man with a white beard. It would have to be an old man with a white beard who would represent the old man winter originally. Now in Britain that turned into Father Christmas, and then in some more southern Scandinavian countries like Denmark it was St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, and that was what really went to America. You don't hear so much of Father Christmas in America, but when I was a child it was always Father Christmas, and he'd be wearing a big hood and a long cloak all the way to the ground, whereas the American version was the Coca-Cola version, which had a jolly man in a short jacket and baggy trousers and boots, which I don't know whether Coca-Cola thought that one up or whether that was more the Danish version. I don't know. But anyway, when I was a kid, there was still Father Christmases, and they were old men in cloaks, red cloaks, sometimes green, and not by the time I was a kid, by the way, but originally, and that would have been from the old man winter, and he probably represented Odin. So you can see how far back this goes. Right, so that's the history of Christmas. Now let's look at it internationally. I'm going to put some pictures here showing Christmas being celebrated in Australia and New Zealand and the Far East in a couple of different ways, and in Europe and in America. And there are a couple of pictures from India I found, and I also found some lovely music played on some sort of Indian drum. Please forgive me, I don't know what they're called. I asked the gentleman who was doing it permission to play the music, and he gave me permission, provided it was properly attributed, so that'll also be in the description. And there are people that you will see in these pictures who are celebrating Christmas, who have no interest in Christmas as a Christian holiday at all. Christmas has gone international. Gone international, and it's gone international because it's one of the few holidays where you are not so much worshipping God, although Christianity does ask you to do that, but you are worshipping family and general brotherhood, whether we're even any sort of religion or not. And it's sort of hinted at in the Grinch story, so I'm just going to read the last bit of it. And yeah, and then I'll get back to the Christmas pudding, I suppose. Okay, so the Grinch had stolen all the presents, and he thought that the presents, the decorations, that sort of thing, he thought that would stop people from having fun. And then suddenly, you know, he was all happy about this in his own miserable way. And then suddenly he heard something. So let's carry on. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so. But it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came, just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. Okay, well, as I say, Merry Christmas, everyone. And remember, brotherhood is there, whether it's physically there or not. It's still all around you. Merry Christmas.